Thank you, Ariana, for the news in 90 seconds. And again, good morning, viewers. If you are now joining us, I am Natalie Richardson, and you are viewing Good Morning Tobago. Joining us next is Cordell Mcclure, Guyana correspondent and, of course, communications specialist. And Mr. Mcclure is no stranger to Tobago, having lived here for many years, but now back home in Guyana. So let's see if we get Mr. Mcclure on the line. Viewers, I also just want to advise you that where he is located, he's having a bit of some trouble with the connection, but we have him. Good morning, Cordell.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good morning, Natalie. Good morning to all of Tobago.
Yes, and I was just telling our viewers that you are no stranger to us here in Tobago, having been Tobagonian for a while. Yes, so
Definitely.
let's delve straight into the issue at hand. We know that international news, regional news, local news, the headlines are focused on Guyana, and a lot of us are keeping abreast of what's happening now. But where I want to start this conversation with you is, where did this start from? What's the historical context, that exists to bring us to this point between Guyana and Venezuela?
Well, it goes way back into our colonial days in terms of the British and the Spanish and the control that they had over, these territories. Um, in Venezuela got independence a very long time ago. And during that period, there was some issue, some controversy between our colonial leaders at that time in terms of the demarcation of the borders between Guyana and Venezuela. At that time, it was British Guyana. And after some discussion, and the threat of war at that time, they took a decision to take the matter to international for arbitration. And at that time, 1899, that's how long ago it was, 124 years ago, we're talking about. At the arbitration settled the borders between Guyana and Venezuela. In fact, at that time, if the map of Guyana was much larger than it is now, but the arbitration fixed the borders between the two countries. And for quite a long time, probably about 60 years, Venezuela accepted that ruling, and it was ratified in the Venezuelan parliament. And it was settled more or less that these were the border. This is a border between Guyana and Venezuela. However, after about 60 years, someone in Venezuela determined that there was some um, misconduct during the arbitration, and so they would no longer accept that ruling, that 1899 arbitration award, and they revisited the issue of the borders between Guyana and Venezuela, and this particularly grew very serious during Guyana's transition to independence in 1966, or just before 1966. It's when the issue started, when it was announced that Guyana would become an independent nation. And that has been an issue since that time. Guyana has taken a lot of steps to resolve the issue because it keeps popping up every now and again. And the over a period of time, there was even a Geneva Agreement, which outlined the process that will be taken to resolve this dispute and the challenges that occur, that are existing between Guyana and Venezuela. And it outlined several processes which all failed in terms of a good officer arrangement, having somebody to mediate and all of that. So the final approach that was taken was to approach the UN and for the determination of a final way to settle this dispute. And so that has now taken Guyana to the ICJ, which is the final court of jurisdiction to deal with these types of matters. So that's where we are now. Of course, you know that on Friday, Venezuela took a decision to go to the polls on Friday to determine that they will not recognize the ICJ and the ICJ's ruling or involvement in this matter, and to annex the Essequibo region from Guyana, which is literally Tuta Guyana.
International world, so to speak, the question of even President Maduro's legitimacy to, his leadership, and even in bringing the referendum to the people of Venezuela. I read in some of the international media reports that there was a low voter turnout, hardly anybody really went out to vote. However, the government did present that 95% of the people of Venezuela voted for this referendum. And it's interesting to know that a country can decide to do this. And you would have explained the historical context, which I really appreciate, and I hope our viewers, because for many younger persons, even older ones, they may not realize the historical context, and this is something that's ongoing. However, there has been protocols put in place, there has been treaties put in place, and a process outlined if there is a dispute. Now, you are underground in Guyana. What's the feel like, getting up one day, seeing this in the news, someone coming to take your land from you? How is that, coming across to the people there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a nice place to be, knowing that your territorial integrity or sovereignty is being challenged.
Right.
It's tense for everybody in Guyana at this time. We understand that Guyana is just about 800,000 people. Venezuela has 30 million. Our army has generally been involved in primarily peacekeeping. We have not been a country that has gone to war before. Our army is not at the level of the Venezuelan army, and when you also understand the geography of Guyana and Venezuela, and you look at the border locations, it is very difficult to monitor and to secure that entire border because of the terrain. It's a lot of forested areas, and so it's difficult. So when you take all of that into consideration, there is some bit of anxiety, which is understandable. Some bit of anxiety, some bit of tension, but I think the resolve is there, and we are all hoping that there will be a peaceful resolution and lives will not be lost in this matter.
Right. Now, in 2015, of course, there was a great or an increased discovery of oil in Guyana, and subsequent to that, again, media reports would have identified the Venezuelan government building airstrips, maybe getting a bit closer to the Essequibo River or getting closer to the border, your border between Guyana and Venezuela. Now, people may say it's obvious, but I must ask you, in your opinion, what do you think really drove the action of President Maduro to claim 2/3 of your country?
Well, I mean, the claim has been around for a while, but Maduro, Venezuela goes to general elections next year.
Yes.
And I mean, based on all indications, a lot of Venezuelans are not in support of re-elected Maduro, and he's just trying to whip up whatever support he can. And politicians generally look for something that can trigger support, trigger interest, trigger solidarity, and I believe that that's what he's doing. He's just hoping that he can use the Essequibo, which is a a sensitive issue in both countries, to generate some type of support. But I mean, it's a very dangerous game to play. One of the things that you have to also take into consideration, following the Venezuelan crisis, economic crisis, a lot of Venezuelans came across the border to Guyana. It is anticipated there are probably about 30,000 Venezuelans living in Guyana, a lot of them in the Essequibo region as well. And any threat to Guyana in terms of war also affects Venezuelans living here. But
Right.
also importantly, I mean, I speak with Venezuelans all the time, and most of them have indicated, their disagreement with the approach. They have families back in Venezuela, and they are also in disagreement, and which is reflected in the low voter turnout. And I believe that this is going to work more against Maduro, even its international support, than he's hoping for.
Right, and it's really important even for us as a country, Trinidad and Tobago, to keep abreast of what's happening. We are geographically pretty close to Venezuela. I mean, Guyana
Correct.
is one of our Caribbean sisters as well, being members in CARICOM and other regional institutions. So, we are keeping abreast of what's going on. And I also want to just piggyback. You mentioned in terms of your country's regiment, your army, and international reports would have also mentioned, I think I heard an interview with your president, President Ali, speaking about the cooperation between the U.S. military. Can you speak to that as well?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say that there are three approaches Guyana has taken to this matter. The first approach is that we're going to explore all options for peace and a peaceful resolution. Guyana has also approached the ICJ for final settlement, so that it will be, indicated once and for all that this is the border, and this is what the border that we will recognize as a world. But then Guyana is also looking towards the international partners for support, particularly military support, because obviously, as I said before, Guyana army, it's really, to be honest, is not a match for Venezuela, but we have got pretty much good commitments from a lot of the international partners, allies, Brazil, the U.S., and several other countries have pledged commitment in terms of ensuring Guyana's sovereignty remains intact. How that translates, we're going to have to wait and see. But I know that the U.S. Army presently has a team in Guyana that has been working with the Guyana Army, and there's been a lot of exchanges with the Brazilian Army as well. So, that's the type of support that Guyana will have to lead on to ensure that, our territorial integrity remains intact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And can you also speak a bit, you'd have mentioned how the people of Guyana are feeling, and it's obvious that there would be some tension and maybe even some concern. How are your government leaders dealing with it? Are you hearing from the opposition? Is there disagreement in terms of the way forward in the world of the politics? How is that, progressing?
And it's not often that you see the government and the opposition on the same page in many countries, and unfortunately, the government and the opposition have been, singing the same song. In fact, they went to parliament to, make a statement that, they're supporting each other, and the opposition supports the government's position, and Guyana's position, rather, on this issue. In fact, yesterday the opposition leader made some statements pertaining to the recent decisions by the Venezuelan government and so forth. But I think both the government and opposition, they have been pretty active, and the statements have been made, and the country is being updated, very, very often. The government has also been moving around, particularly in the Essequibo region as well, just to reassure residents that they are safe, and there's no need to panic. And one of the biggest challenges right now is to be able to get people to stick with the official sources of information,
Right.
because during a time of crisis, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of misinformation there, false videos being shared, and all of that happening. And so the government has been really encouraging people, don't just look on Facebook and see a post,
Yes.
but look at
Yeah.
the official government sites, look at the sites of the Guyana Defense Force, and the Department of Public Information, for official information.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I must say, thank you, Cordell, for your time and for shedding some more information and even light on this issue, this border dispute between Venezuela and Guyana. And from us here, we just want to wish the people of Guyana safety, and we really hope that this dispute is resolved and things can go back, to usual business in Guyana. So thank you again for joining us, Cordell.
No problem. It's a pleasure.
All right, viewers, so now it's your time to share the live, share the live, share the live.